What's up, y'all? I just released an EP called The Lighthouse that I wanted to break down a layering job that I did in the track Wiki. So if you haven't heard the EP, go check it out. It's in the description. And this is what we're going to be breaking down today. So I'll go ahead and get into it.
It sounds the sea.
And so the main bass patch for this is made out of 4 different layers, so I'm going to show you how to make all those. The first is the sub patch, then we have this grunge layer, then we have this metallic layer, and then lastly we have this ravey saw layer. And so we'll start things off with the sub layer here. And so this patch is made up of 2 different wavetables and a sample. The first wavetable is going to be this Deep House Pluck, which is one of Virtual Riot's wavetable presets or whatever that you can actually find online if you just Google it. You don't have to pay for it or anything. It's an old thing that he put out. And so as you can see here, we have our second LFO modulating the frame, right? What the position is, and the first one is modulating the level here. And then you can see I have this subby knob, and what this does is picks whether we're using Deep House Pluck or Deep House Pluck 2. So as you can see here, in the second half, we switch from that to the Deep House Pluck 2. And it just gives the second half a much like different tone. And then I'm using this Amon Tobin sample right here as the second layer for this. And it just plays a little piece of the sample there. So we mix those both together and we have... So then next we add in a low pass filter with a pretty, not significant, but a nice little resonance there. And as you can see, we're kind of starting to get the tone of our sound. And then I have a high pass here. Right, so that's really cleaning out the bottom end of this. Then next I have I don't know who this is, Alan. It's some tech house producer, I think, that's... I don't know the name of the guy, but he had good samples, so I got one of them. Or she, maybe even. And so I'm using that sample there just to kind of add a ticky little top layer, and you can use whatever you want for that. So we've cut out our bottom of this. Then I've added another almost low-pass filter, but it's just basically a high band pulling down, just to kind of kill some of that tickiness that we've brought in. And then another little resonance bump right there, a little bell-shaped curve going up and down. And then lastly, we bring the sub back in, but I just wanted a nice clean sub for this, so that's before our processing. Then I have distortion and dispersion going on this. And that's all as far as the in-patch effects. And then notice the envelope here is a little bit of a... stepping down curve. And then lastly, just so I don't forget to mention it, we do have a pitch drop on this. So as you can see, we turn this off, really stagnant, turn it back on, and you can kind of hear that little pitch drop going in. And then you can see my different filters here. I'll just kind of hover over these so you can get an idea of where they're routed to. This is a filter modulator, basically. This is a wavetable modulator, and this is my intensity and a little bit of movement on this disperser. So then moving into our post effects, we have an EQ, really beefing up the low end. That's clipping pretty hard. So then I run it through this faster master preset in the Saturn II, and that kind of just brings the volume of it down to like just, you know, not clipping basically. And then lastly we got a compressor gluing it together. And then as you can see here, once the subby switch happens, that's what changes our which oscillator is running right here. So it just switches whether this one's going or this one's going, because when the subby knob turns up, the dubby knob turns down, and vice versa. So we end up with that. So then moving on to our next patch here, we have this grunge synth. That's what it sounds like with everything enabled. So I'll go ahead and turn off all my stuff here. So the first thing that I added into this patch was the saw to triangle wavetable. And it just modulates from saw into triangle. Then we have Calypso, which is one of my wavetables. It's in the Wavetable pack. If you go download it, link will be in the description for that. If you want it, it's just one of the ones I've created. And so as you can see, that's kind of scanning through like almost some bassy, mid-bassy frequencies, a little bit of grittiness to them. And then the band of this is being changed by this aggro knob here, right? Goes from this to this. And so the aggro knob is just changing the start frame that it modulates from. So those two together sound like this. Then we add in a low band filter, kind of plucking down off of this envelope right here. Then we add a low notch or a high notch that's going from low to high, so the opposite direction. It's got quite a stronger resonance too, so it's less wide. And then lastly, this high shelf kind of acting almost as like a low pass filter. So then from there we go into my patcher, which is just basically a compression preset, you know, so it goes through this filter, which is a low pass, high pass, then a disperser, then an OTT, then another kind of filter that I think modulates just some cleanup frequencies here to where if I turn a knob, these bands go down. Then I have some saturation, OTT, a little bit of space elements, OTT, a high cleaner, right, to clean the highs up, and then a wave shaper. That's the basic idea, but just know this is like a little fat rack. Right, so it just adds some width and a lot of compression and a little bit of distortion too. Then I add in this Pro Q3, just slamming the highs out, and then this Fruity Convolver, which for this one I use this sound. That's an Eliderp bass patch or bass sample there, and it just modulates up with this Fruity Convolver. Just kind of adds that nice wetness that I think like if I'm aiming to make an ocean, you know, sea themed thing, it helps with that. So then I have an OTT, just gluing it together. And then lastly, this retro color, which none of the modules are used except for the wobble. And this adds just a ton of width to it, right? And makes it warble and again have that sea-like flavor, right? So that's without it. Then with it. So keeping it moving, next we have this metallic layer. And to build this one out, I started again with the Amon Tobin Chops Amber. Sample. And then just plucked through that first place. Almost the same. I probably cloned this patch off of the other patch. So then I added in a sub note. And then another deep house pluck. So this is definitely a clone patch. So you kind of know how this goes already. So then we have a disperser, distortion, and filter. Really cutting this super low. So then next, I add in another disperser. And so what makes this patch super wet is the next thing I add in is this Snap Heap's Shimmering Reverbs preset. And as you can see, it's, you know, with the settings set like this, I don't know if I went in and changed anything. But it just gives it that like little wumpy metallic flavor that's nice. Then an EQ boosting our low mids here. So then we have a patcher. Again, just compressing it super hard and kind of distorting it and bringing a lot of harmonics out in it. So then for our final layer, we get through this first half, and then I wanted to bring in more energy after the bass hits happen right here. So I bring in this FMravy sounding patch. That sounds like that. And so to start this patch out, I had an analog square wave, sync turned up to times 12, and then a lot less volume on here. The semitones are turned up, and then there's this pitch drop raising the master tuning on this plugin. Right, gives it that little type of tone. And then I have a smooth saw with these settings here, and the sync at 8, but the harmonic set to 3. So we end up with that, you know, unison's turned on here to get these options open. Then next, I added in this noise and filter, and so without the filter, it sounds like that, but then you add the filter in, and we're just getting that high-end noise, right? So that filter helps to clean this sound up a lot. Then lastly, we have an overdrive, kind of just dirtying it up. Then next, some more filtering, a high pass filter and a non-linear filter. And that one just kind of shines the top end of it up. It's set to fuzzy. And then lastly, an ensemble, which just really washes it out and gives it, again, that sea-like quality and kind of chaotic quality too, I would say. Then we send it through an OTT. And lastly, the high pass to clean it up one more time. And so before I ended this one, I did want to show how my layering goes real quick. So as you can see, sub is taking up the low mids and mostly the center, right? And then we add this grunge layer, which is really, really full, but so wide that it leaves space for that sub, right? If this was centered, as you can see, it gets in the way of the sub a lot and just kind of ruins the sound by doing that. So then we have this metallic layer that is our, it's got a little bit of highs coming in, but mostly it leaves some space up top. And again, really wide on this one. I was not afraid to let my sounds just be super washed out, since it is like the C track of this EP. And then finally our saw layer, which is taking up that space that I've left from the metallic layer here. So moving top to bottom here, we have the saw layer taking up the high end, which brings more energy once we get halfway through the drop, right? Then we add in the metallic layer. Then we add in the grunge layer. And then finally the sub, which gives us a nice, super rich, thick, modulated, and I just think a cool sound. So with that being said, y'all, thank you for watching. If you haven't checked out the EP, go do that if you want to. If not, thanks for watching. I'll see y'all in the next one.